Ah, we are so back. Welcome to the stream. We have a wonderful stream, a wonderful class planned for today. The best class, I'm sure. But before we get started, I need to get something off my chest. And it's actually, I've been wearing this shirt, this hat. You all know this outfit now since 2012. I've been wearing this same outfit now for over 12 years. And I have to be honest. I am just so sick of wearing this shirt, this hat in every single video. So I'm not going to stand here and whine about it. I'm going to do something about it. We're just going to say goodbye to the shirt today. There we go. That was so easy. It's gone. Oh, I feel so much better already. And you know what? This hat too. This stupid hat. I'm so sick of this hat. Now everyone can stop bothering me about wearing the same outfit every single video. Okay. Now that we've taken care of business, first thing I want to give a shout out to Glass Artist, who gave me a wonderful $20 donation right before we started the stream. So 20 dabs to you. Let me get some music. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Oh wait, sorry for playing two different tracks at the same time, but that just shows how excited I was to get the donation. Welcome everyone. Let's see who's here already. We've got, actually I missed someone. Let's see. Okay, who was first? Hope Gate and Tanya, Aniki, Nate, the person whose last name I cannot pronounce, so I will not try. Nate's here as well. Thank you everyone for coming. Yeah, I mean, I feel pretty free. It's liberating to get that burden off my shoulders. So we have a class about, we're not going to learn how to conjugate the Yule form. I should say that. This is not like a, everyone's done a video about how to conjugate the Yule form. You can find videos from like before I started YouTube, how to conjugate the Yule form, pretty much. We're not going to go over that again. Now, if you're hoping I'd go over that, I have a whole separate live stream you can watch and pretend that I'm going over it on my channel. I have a beginner Korean course, which also teaches all the conjugation rules. There are a couple old videos on my channel that teach conjugation rules. I have books that teach them. You can find them all over the internet. So we're not going to be going over those today. But they're there. But even if you know how to conjugate the Yule form, that doesn't mean people know how to use it. I see people misusing the Yule form all the time in Korean. And it's not so much about conjugating it wrong, which simply takes practice and time. There's nothing you can do. It's about using it wrong. Even if we assume that this hypothetical learner conjugated it perfectly, they were still using it wrong. And I see this all the time. So we're going to be talking about that today. And in order to talk about the Yule form properly, we're also going to be comparing it to a form that I see a lot of misunderstandings. Let's see. It's a common misconception, a really common misconception that Korean people don't use formal speech. We're also going to be talking about that too today. So these are two big things I want to fix for today's video, is how to more correctly use the Yule form so that you're not misusing it, like which situations, where shouldn't you use it, and where really should you be using it, as well as the formal form, which we're also going to be learning, the nida, nika, that sort of stuff. Like, what about that form? When do you use that? Is it ever used? And surprise, if you don't already know, it is used all the time. And in addition to being used all the time, it's also used every day by you. You are using it right now when you're speaking Korean with anyone. So it's extremely common. So I kind of want to correct two misconceptions about both of those. So that's what we're going to be doing for today. So the prerequisites for this course are simple. You really just need to know how to conjugate the Yule form. We're not going to be going over that today. If you don't know how to conjugate the Yule form, you're still fine for this class because we don't have too many sentences. I have a lot of stuff to talk about. And there aren't too many sentences we're going to be writing on the board for this lesson. I apologize in advance. We're going to be taking questions, and if you don't know how to conjugate the UL form correctly, it's kind of okay. You'll still be able to get by through this lesson because we're not doing too many sentences. That's the reason why. Okay. But we'll get started with the actual class at the top of the hour. So still got about 15 minutes left if you have any questions you want to ask before we start. And Nate says he's a new man. Yeah, I feel like it. It's great. Welcome everyone. Leave, if you don't have a question before we get started, go ahead and leave where you're watching from today. This is my first live class back in the US again. Flo says, 안녕하세요, 선생님. I can't stick around for the live stream, but welcome back. It's good to see you again. Hope you had a great trip. Yes, I did. I had a great trip, and it's great to be back in my regular, back at Gyeongbok Palace, in my regular teaching area. So yeah, I feel really comfortable being back here with my whiteboard. Aniki says, I watched the series Signal that you said you've enjoyed it. I find myself saying, 이재한 형사님, 듣고 있습니까? Yeah, are you listening? 이재한 형사님, 듣고 있습니까? Yeah, you'll especially hear formal speech used in that sort of like official, like we'll talk about that. I'll talk about that. It's not just because he's trying to show extra respect, which it is, but there's something else to it that you might not be aware of, how to use the formal speech. And then even though they're saying 듣고 있습니까, like formal speech, it's actually not, it doesn't sound formal. I'll say that. It doesn't sound formal when you use formal speech all the time. Sometimes it sounds natural. It just sounds like that's appropriate. It doesn't sound like overly polite or anything like that. So that's one of the misconceptions we're going to be talking about today, which I think is really important because a lot of learners, including myself when I was first learning, a lot of learners avoid using the formal speech because they feel like, oh, it's going to be awkward. So they never use it. And then when they do use it, it's really awkward because they weren't using it correctly. So then it's better for them to just kind of avoid it because they're going to misuse it. So we're going to talk about that. Watching from Quebec, from England, another person from England, Canada, France, Spain, French. You've got the Olympics going on right now. I would watch it, but I don't have cable TV, so there's nowhere I could watch it. But yesterday I met with my younger brother, and he had it on his TV, so I did catch a little bit of. It was like jumping horses or something. I have no clue what it was. There was some Olympic event. Tell me what this is. The Olympic event where the guy's on the horse and the horse is just doing like, and they're like, oh yes, he took a perfect 38.3 degree turn. Light tapping there. Oh, a little bit rushed. Slight turning around the corner. Oh, perfect. Like, I have no clue what they're doing. Like, did the horse get treats after that performance? I've never seen it before. So we were both kind of like looking at each other. We're like, is that good? Like, are they doing a good job? I don't know. But that was one of the events. I'm sure someone knows exactly what it is. Oh, here we go. Yeah, two people already know. They say horse. Is it dressage? Equestrian team dressage. What is that? Am I even pronouncing it correctly? Dressage. It just looked. I'm sorry, it looked ridiculous. I'm sure it must take extreme skill or it wouldn't be the Olympics. So I'll accept it must be extremely difficult to do, but it looked like ridiculous. Like, I mean, I've seen people's dogs do that when they want treats. That's why it was kind of funny. But anyway, I've never seen that before. I also don't normally watch the Olympics, so there are probably a lot of other things I don't know what's going on. Spain, Texas, Florida, Michigan, Aurora, Colorado, Afghanistan, whoa, Montreal, Quebec, the French-speaking area of Canada. Namaste, sir. Okay, Chicago, Poland, Hawaii, Italy, South Africa, India, Philippines. Flo Purdy. Hey, Flo, thank you. I don't beg for donations, but if you're one of the people who is able to support me, I really, really appreciate it. All of this channel is built on and is sustained by your support. I don't have a second job. Maybe I should get a second job. I don't want a second job. I take all my time to do this. So thank you. Thank you. And 5 dabs for Flow. It's $1 per dab. That's the current exchange rate. Let's see who else mentioned where they're coming from. Germany, Washington State, Hungary, Aloha from Hawaii. We have another Hawaii. I have to say like Hawaii, just like they do in all the tourism videos. Iran, Boston, England. Okay, now I'm going to check some questions. I see a question from one of my members, Hopegate. If you're a member, I don't only read the member questions, but if you're a member, yours pops up first. So that's another benefit if you're considering joining, is that you get priority for where my eyes go because your name is in green. Can the up and upsosal be used by itself as a verb ending similar to just sosal? No, the up is a, well, it's part of an ending. It's not an ending in itself. So just no, you wouldn't use it at like ha up like that. If you use up by itself, it actually has a different meaning in Korean. There's a size of a, I won't say city, but like a unit of size for how big your area is. Like there's going to be like the major metropolitan cities, and then there's like city, and then it goes down to like I'm trying to say this in English. Kun. You've got like these smaller areas, and then if someone says they live in an up, it's basically like they live in this like random block small town. Like you'd say little small town, and those might be like farming areas or something like that. It's like a really small area of city that's not really incorporated into like a whole city. Like you're not going to have all the same things you'd have in a city, but it's still a area of Korea. So that's what people would think of if you say up. But no, it's not a separate grammar form. I actually do know a couple people who live in up. So if you ask them where they live, and they'll say, oh, I live in, Gyeonggi-do. Gyeonggi-do is the whole area around Seoul, although it doesn't include the city of Seoul. And you ask them, oh, do you live in like this, blah, 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 this this city? And they're like, oh, no, it's not a city. You can say, oh, is it a, this or this or this? And then they'll reply, oh, it's actually in up, which is like nothing. And there's even smaller as well. But typically up is like the smallest I know two people who live in somewhere like that. And basically it's countryside. They're just surrounded by farmland. Village, town, yeah, you can. It's hard to say because I'm from a major city. I'm from here around LA. So it's like, I can't really imagine that kind of smaller area, but like a rural, it's not even a town, like a section of a rural area. Yeah. But that's what you would write on your letters if you're sending mail to someone. Oh, Hope, I am so sorry. Hope, you didn't say this, but I noticed you're probably gonna realize it and ask. You're actually asking about, my tablet is very dirty. It's been sitting around for 3 months, and I did not see that you wrote up. So you're talking about the formal one. I only read the up part that you're talking and asking similar to so. So the answer to your question is still no. Up is also not a separate form. Up by itself in that form specifically, because there also is an up as well, like it used to be up nida, like that. But the up is a extra polite form. Actually, I have another additional thing to add to your question. If you watch my Master Politeness Levels course, lesson 24, I actually mention up separately. It's not a separate form though, but I do mention that how it makes your formal speech, it makes that special super polite speech even more polite. So there are forms that have op and don't have it that are both usable, but the op one is the extra polite style. Yeah. Okay. So you get 2 answers to your question, but I apologize for misreading the first time you asked. Kai. Oh, hey, Kai, I recognize your name. Tips on staying motivated to learn Korean when you feel like you're doing so awful. I always recommend keeping a record of where you are, like your Korean studies, like write sentences in Korean that you made. because when you go back to those in a few months, you can more easily see how you've improved. You can see a sentence you wrote and you're like, oh, wow, why did I write that? That's kind of what you'll have to do as you get better. In the beginning level, though, it's really easy to see progress. You don't really need to do this so much in the beginning level. You can easily know, oh, I didn't even know that form last week. But you need to still have some way you can compare yourself to yourself in the past. As for other ways to stay motivated, things that you enjoy doing that are just in Korean. So you don't have to stay like, oh, I'm motivated to like, oh, I have to learn more Korean. You just kind of have to keep it in your life. Keep doing things that you would normally enjoy in Korean if you spoke it already. Keep trying to do those things because that will self-motivate yourself to do the studying, which you might not want to do, and the practicing, which can be sometimes difficult to do. Aniki says konde means, I found it as wild as. So yeah, I actually haven't, I think that's on my request list. I haven't done a stream or a class about that, but Aniki, if you want to make a request for that, you're a member, you get priority. So let me know in the Discord. Tag me in Discord. I can add it to the future live stream requests. But it's an advanced form. You're not going to really use it. In Canada, I think we call it a township. Okay, yeah, it's like nothing, like size-wise. Obviously, it's, sorry if you live in one of those areas. It's not nothing, but it's like size-wise, it's like tiny. And then Hope asks or says, I watched that yesterday. I was just wondering if it could be used by itself. No, it wouldn't be its own. It's not its own ending. It's kind of like the she in like the honorific she, which also cannot be used by itself. It has to be used with some sort of conjugation. So you can be she-o, like sho works, but not just she by itself. So it's just a piece that adds on to something. And those types of things actually have a name in Korean. I'll just write it in purple so you can see it. There are a lot of these types of things in Korean. This is something you don't write this down unless you're Hope Gate. Son o mal omi. Son means before. O is the word. Mal and is ending. This isn't the mal for word. This is the mal for ending. So like so we would say pre-final word ending. Omi is literally word tail. So it's like the pre-final word ending suffix, which is a mouthful in English, but it's not that bad in Korean. Sonabar omi would be those things that are attached onto the conjugation that by themselves are not the final ending. So that's why they're called before the final and the tail of the word. So like she and like that thing. So you can find others of these as well. Again, do not write that down unless you're Hope Gate, because they asked that question. I've never once seen that word used. It's something I use because I read a lot of like grammar materials and stuff. Oh, day notes. Day notes. We say day notes. What is RON? Woohoo, that's like $2. Thank you. That's Romanian. Day notes. Speaking of day notes, I'm definitely going to see that new Beetlejuice movie, but I have no confidence it's going to be a good movie. So we'll see. Does anyone have an opinion on the upcoming Beetlejuice movie? Because I was a pretty big Beetlejuice fan, but I don't know. I'm not confident that Tim Burton, if you're watching, Tim Burton, if you're watching and learning Korean, I don't know if you can make a good movie again. I think you've lost it. I'm sorry. I think you gave away too much to CG. I'm praying that you've learned to recapture that magic you had. But I'm hoping it's really cheesy and campy and like bad to special effects. If it is, it's going to be good. But I don't know. I don't know how to feel yet. And Kai, thank you so much as well for the $2 donation. First, I'm going to give day notes to Dabs. Kai. And I see I have another donation here. Tanya. Hey, Tanya. Tanya H. Oh, wow. $10 donation. Oops. Try to do this quick so we can start our class. Tanya wrote $5 for a Smeagol voice impression and $5 for Jeremy for a sweet. Oh, that's so nice. He'll be really happy to hear that someone someone sent him a donation because he was asking about that. They're like, Daddy, how much of the donations are mine? I'm like, oh, well, you see, Jeremy. I mean, they all kind of are yours, but okay, Tanya, thank you so much. So instead of Dabs, you want a Smeagol voice impression. Is there something that you want me to say in Smeagol's voice? Let me know really quick, then we're going to start the lesson in a minute. If there is, I'll say something in Smeagol's voice real quick before we start. Okay, let's see any other questions real quick. Sebyok, welcome. Yeah, you didn't miss anything yet. Katarina says, my sister and I cooked Korean kimchi pancakes yesterday. Okay, so kimchijeon. That sounds really good. I love jeon. I sat down with a Korean recipe in a dictionary and first translated it. Very beginner level, so my brain had a good workout before dinner. That sounds great. Tanya, do the lesson? We can't do it that long, precious. Don't listen to her. It's a stupid idea. No, precious, we can do it as long as we want to. Call him. Okay. I don't know. I haven't seen the Twin Tower. Is that right? Two Towers, Twin Towers. It came out literally like the same year, right? I haven't seen the Two Towers in like forever, so I gotta brush up my Smeagol. Okay, so feel free to ask questions during this lesson. We're going to be learning about formal speech and informal speech today. Forgot how to spell hierarchy. The way you talk to someone in Korean is based on social hierarchy. What do you think is the most important thing that determines how you speak with someone? There's one thing. Actually, there are 4 separate things you have to keep in mind. One of them is the most important. Does anyone know what that is? If you do, feel free to write in the chat. Oh, and Hopegate. Hey, Hopegate. Thank you, Hope. Hope G. As if it's your last name, Hopegate. I'm really happy I'll be able to follow your live streams again. Thanks for this super complete answer. Yeah, thank you for the donation. I really appreciate it. Again, all of this channel is built and supported still today, 100% on your support. I don't have a second job. I'm considering getting one just so I can make sure I can always support this channel and everything. But thank you. Those go out to Hope. Okay, yes, many people answered correctly. Age is right, but that's not the only one. So the way you talk to someone will depend on this. The most important thing to consider is a person's age. Now, that is actually based on Korean age, or specifically what's known as yeon nai, just the age that someone, just the year that someone was born. But it's the same as Korean age. So although Korean age officially died last year, officially nothing has changed as of last year. You still will use your Korean age when you talk to someone and tell them your age. The exception would be some younger people tend now to say their regular Western age, their international age. Some Koreans will now use their international age when they talk to other people and say their age. But then if you're talking with someone older, you'll still have to clarify by saying the year that you were born anyway, so that they know what you're talking about. Because if someone says, how old are you? And you're like, oh, well, I'm 25. They're going to be, oh, so what year were you born? Because they want to know, is that 25 in Korean age or is that 25 in the international age? So you still need to know Korean age. The next thing that determines how you speak with someone. Oh, so I'll say, if someone is the same age as you or younger, typically, if you're close with them, you can speak casually. If you're close, you can't just introduce yourself to someone, find out they're the same age as you or younger, and start speaking casually to them. That could be very rude. Probably will be rude. An exception might be much older people who know that they're way older than you, and they're in a regular, casual, everyday situation. They're just going to speak casually to you. But otherwise, you want to be polite until you know that you don't have to be. And if someone's 1 year older than you even, you might never get to speak casually with them unless you both agree that you'll speak casually unless you agree that you're both going to speak casually to each other. And that can happen as a non-Korean with a Korean. It usually will not happen with 2 Korean people. So keep that in mind. If you have a Korean friend who's told you, hey, let's just speak casually, bro, that's because you're non-Korean, that they're trying to adapt to your culture. They want to kind of make it easier and more fun. If you were a native Korean speaker, they probably would not say that to you because you are a different age as them. But it depends. If you don't know how to speak with someone, ask them. The next thing you need to pay attention to is your relationship with them. Obviously, you're going to speak differently to someone who's your family member or someone who you're dating or you've married, your friends, your really close friends, someone you just kind of know, a coworker, a stranger, your boss. All of these sort of different relationships will also dictate how you speak with someone. Your family members, typically Koreans, will speak casually to their own parents once they've reached about teenage years, but not everyone does that. Some people will still speak politely toward their parents. My wife did until maybe about 10 years ago. Now she speaks more casually with them. Actually, not even 10, maybe like 5 or 6. She usually would speak politely, but then she switched to more casual speech. If you're dating someone, regardless of their age, you might have a different way that you speak. A younger person dating an older person might speak more politely to them, and the older person would speak more casually, but sometimes they'll just agree, hey, let's just talk to each other as if we were the same age. If you don't know how to talk with someone, ask. They're okay telling you. Okay, I'm going to try to move a little faster. The next thing you need to pay attention to is work position. So, is this an employee of yours? Are you the boss? Probably you won't be the boss, but if you were, you're going to be able to speak more casually, or at least not so formally, to your employee, and your employee will have to speak politely to you, regardless of whether you're close or not, just because you're employee, just because they're your employee. A coworker, let's say you're a little older than another coworker, because you're still coworkers, you're kind of on the same level, so you might still speak politely you still might speak politely with each other, even though you both work at the same company. These are other things you have to consider. Yeah, if someone's your junior or your superior at work and your age is similar, well, then you might still have a different way that you speak based on your relationship at work. And then, of course, your boss. Unless you're like best friends with your boss and you've known him or her from growing up, you're probably not going to speak casually with your boss ever, as well as with your teacher. This is a culture difference. In the US, I know that if you become friends with a teacher, and even after you've graduated, you finish school, you might still hang out with teachers. Like if there's someone you're close with, it happens. Korea, that sort of thing doesn't happen. So I had a really cool teacher when I was in high school, and he was friends with my mom. I also became his friend because we just thought each other were cool. Like I liked he knew lots of cool stuff about English stuff. He liked my English assignments. So we kind of became friends. Like we weren't like talking with each other, but we went out with my mom and him and his friend at the time and me, and we went to like go see a play or go see movies. We saw like the new Star Wars together. Unfortunately, I didn't like that, but the experience was nice. And yeah, you could call him by his first name, and it's kind of like, casual speaking. That sort of thing is impossible in Korea. So keep in mind that this is more strict in Korea. And then finally, last but not least, is the situation you're in. So where are you right now? Are you giving a speech? In which case, it doesn't really matter if you know a few people in the audience. You're giving a speech to everyone. So in this situation, you would still need to be polite, appropriate to everyone you're talking with. Are you just talking in private with someone? In which case, you can forget whatever rules you know, and you can just use whatever rules you and that person have. Like if a friend tells you, hey, speak casually to me, it actually means in private. It doesn't mean when you're in front of other people necessarily. So you want to speak casually with them in secret, but then when you go out to the rest of the world and you're talking in front of them with your friend, you're not going to speak that way after that because it can make it look like you're being rude. In fact, that is why you sometimes will hear people on TV shows, celebrities, slip up when they're talking. They might use casual speech to another person really quick and then the rest of it in regular polite speech because they they're so used to talking with that person off camera that now that they're in a show and they're supposed to technically speak more politely to someone who's older, and they kind of forget about it. So keep that in mind. And I have a whole course about this if you want to learn it in detail, master politeness levels. So I'm not going to go into too much detail. That's enough for this. Okay, I'm going to try and move a little bit more quickly so we can get through this. In Korean, there are 7 politeness levels or speech levels. But of these 7, only 4 are commonly used today. And these speech levels will determine how polite or how casual you sound when you're talking with someone else. And these levels include casual speech, informal speech, formal speech, honorific speech and humble speech. All of that is included within these 4 levels. And again, we're not going into detail about this. This is kind of an overview before we talk about informal speech in more detail. Okay, so what is informal speech? Well, informal speech is informal. It's not formal. That's all informal means. So in Korean, there is formal speech and there's informal speech, right? That's kind of obvious. Now, there's also casual speech, but casual speech is technically informal because it's not formal. So that's what I mean when I say formal versus informal speech. Typically, though, when someone says informal speech, they're not referring to casual speech. Usually you're referring to the speech that's still formal, but it's not formal, which is the yo form. Because yo form is actually informal. It's not formal. It's not casual, but it's not formal. Okay, and I need to make a distinction also, before we talk about the yo form. Formal speech is not necessarily polite. Just because it's formal doesn't mean it's polite. And on the other hand, just because it's informal doesn't mean it's impolite. Those are completely unrelated terms. Even the yo form, the standard informal yo form, can be very polite if it's used together with honorific speech, for example. If it's used in the right situations, it's very polite. And even using formal speech, in fact, can sound impolite if it's used in a really awkward situation. It's used in a very weird way. If you're talking with your close friend and you actually use formal speech and you're not joking about it, it sounds kind of like you're now suddenly distancing yourself from the person, like you've had a fight or something, and you're just trying to be like really distant, like polite and really distant. It's kind of weird. You wouldn't do that. So formal and informal is just referring to the amount of respect. Oh yeah, I need to make this a separate thing. Really quick, 10-second break, then I go on to this next topic because I don't want to rush here. Let's just check here. Okay. Maggie K says, I want to be a Korean teacher and teach Korea too. I'm really inspired by you. Awesome. Are you a Korean or just, are you learning Korean? Okay. All right. So this is something I want to also emphasize. Formal and informal speech is referring specifically to, when I say formal and informal speech, I mean it's the amount of respect that is shown to the person that you are. Actually, I shouldn't even say listener. It's not even listener. It could be anyone. It could be the listener. To be really accurate, informal or formal speech is specifically about how much respect you're showing to the person that you are currently speaking to. It doesn't have to do with the person you're talking about. It's just how much respect is the speaker showing to the person that they are currently speaking to. That's formal versus informal. And that's different than honorific speech or humble speech. And if you don't know those already, don't worry, but I did have separate lessons if you'd like to learn. Humble speech and honorific speech are specifically showing more respect towards someone who you're talking about. Has no relation to who you're talking to. You can be using casual speech, you can be using slang and whatever, and being really rude, but you're still using humble speech and honorific speech because those show respect to the person that you're talking about, someone else. So these are for the person who you're speaking to. Okay. All right, so let's talk about using the yo form. Let's go into the main part of our lesson now that we've done a really quick introduction. So the yo form is the most common way that a verb is conjugated at the end of a sentence. It's the most common way you're going to see. And we're not going to be reviewing how to conjugate the yo form in this lesson. You don't need to know how to, you don't need to have mastered how to conjugate the yo form in order to know how it's used. So the most important thing you can know about the yo form is actually, besides its conjugation, is how it feels when someone uses the yo form. When someone uses the yo form, so anything that ends with yo, any sentence that ends with yo, the feeling that you give, and this feeling is extremely important. That's why I'm emphasizing it. I'm not just saying this as like a note, like, oh, by the way, if you know the feeling of each of the forms, for example, informal speech and formal speech, as well as casual speech, we're not doing that today, but informal speech, so the yo form, has a soft feel. It has a respectful feel. So when you use it, no matter what you're saying, it can be an insult, anything, the feeling that you're giving by using the yo form specifically is a soft and respectful feel. And this is important to know because it is different than the feeling when you use formal speech. And whether you use formal speech or informal speech doesn't always depend on these difficult rules. Like, oh, this person's older than me, therefore I am their second cousin's brother's sister's aunt's first roommate, so I should use this. You don't need to know that. Koreans don't memorize that either. What Koreans feel when they use the different speech levels is this when you use the yo form. Do I want to sound soft and respectful to the person I'm talking with? Due to just Koreans' culture, Korean people's personalities and the way that the culture works, the way people typically behave, most of the time, this is what you want to sound like to other people if you're not close friends. You want to sound soft and respectful. Okay, we'll come back to this in a bit, but write this down. It has a soft, respectful feel, because if you know this, you'll know when you should use it. All right. The regular yo form, which is the standard yo form, so nothing else added to it, just like hada becomes heyo. Just that, like just the regular yo form. This form is going to be polite in most situations, but not all. It's not always polite, but it is going to be polite in most situations. Now, typically this form will not be used to, actually, tell me, I don't want to just do all the talking this lesson. What will be a situation where you would not use the yo form? If you already know, type it in chat. Give me 1 or 2 situations when you would not want to use the yo form, if you already know. Sebyuk said work and school. No, you could use these at work unless you have like more specific situation you're talking about. Speaking to a pet, lexica. Yes, that's great. I'm not going to be covering that in this lesson, but that would be covered in the casual speech lesson. But when you're talking with an animal, you don't need to show respect. Well, you don't in Korean. You shouldn't show respect when you're talking to an animal, because especially here, imagine this, you use really soft, respectful speech to a dog or a cat or someone's pet rabbit, and then you look at the owner who's a stranger and you use the same level of speech to them. It means you think of them as the same amount of respect. They deserve the same amount of respect, and that's disrespectful. Don't do that. So only use casual speech when talking to animals. If there is an exception, if an animal could talk back to you, you might use polite speech. So the Korean dub of Zootopia Everyone's not using casual speech to each other because they're able to communicate. So if there's like in a future where they develop a machine you put on a dog's head that makes it super smart and can talk, like in the movie Up, you might want to not speak casually to them in that point. But yeah, animals do not get any sort of honorifics or politeness when you talk with them. Making an announcement. Aniki, yeah, if you're making an announcement, you probably wouldn't want to use the standard Yule form because it's not very polite to who you're talking. You don't know who you're addressing, so it might not be polite enough. We'll talk about that in a bit as well with the next section. Military, yes. That's right. Military will use formal speech, as I'll explain. Giving a speech, same. Speaking to kids, yes. Although you can use the Yule form when you're talking to kids if you want. It's not necessary though, like if you're talking to a really young kid. But sometimes parents want to encourage their kids to speak the same way they're speaking to them. So the parents might start off by using more polite speech so that the baby will imitate that, like especially around like 3 years old when kids kind of start talking. You want to use they're going to be copying the same language you're using it to them. So you might want to use the Yule form to them, but it's not required. If you do though, it's not weird. It just shows soft and respectful. It just has a soft and respectful feeling to it. Just know that. Versus casual speech, which I'm not going in this lesson, but I'll just let you know, casual speech has a friendly feel, not soft and not respectful, just friendly. News anchor, yes. Someone said when talking to yourself, yes. If you're talking to yourself, you wouldn't use the Yule form because you do not show respect to yourself when you're speaking. Although you should respect yourself, you don't do it with language. You only use respect. You only show respect when you're teaching, when you're talking to, not teaching. You only show respect when you're speaking to someone else. If you're talking to yourself and you use the Yule form or formal speech or any amount of formality in Korean, it sounds really weird. It's just don't do it. And it includes the honorific speech, humble speech, anything like that. Don't use any of that about yourself because not only does it sound like you're trying to boast you're trying to make yourself seem like really important. It also just sounds awkward on top of it. Like it's not something that's used even comedically. Writing papers. Yeah. Writing papers. I also talk about that in, I think, lesson 23 that's also lesson 24 in the Master Politeness Levels course. But yeah, writing papers, you use what's known as kuote. And there's, kuote is for speaking. Munote is the, for writing. So there's a different form, which is like plain speech, essentially. Okay. So, you're not going to use the Yule form when you're talking to friends who are the same age as you or younger because you're friends or close. But instead, you will use the Yule form when you're talking to older friends. So even if you made a friend in Korea, if they're 1 year older than you in Korean age, that doesn't mean you can speak casually to them because you're friends. You think, oh, we're friends. Now we can speak casually. Ask them. Don't just assume that you can speak casually to them because as a non-Korean, they might prefer that you just speak casually to them because they want that, but you can't assume it. Not everyone's like that. I have some Korean friends who prefer I speak to them casually, and I've known other people who haven't mentioned that. They kind of feel like, no, it's cool. Like we're friends, but it doesn't feel like a relationship where we're like that sort of friends, if that makes sense. Like you can be like professional friends. You can have like a business friendship, but that doesn't mean that you're going to be like sitting at the couch together, eating a pizza and stuff like that sort of friend. It's different. You don't want to just assume you can speak casually with someone just because they're your friend. So ask them. That's the tip I'll give you. So typically the younger friend will speak more politely and the older friend will speak more casually. And again, if you're not sure how to speak with someone who, even if you're close with them, ask. In fact, even some dating couples might use the correct speech levels to each other. You know, the older person will speak casually and the younger person will speak politely. It's a thing. It's not the most common way. Usually when people are dating, no matter if their ages are different, they're going to speak equally to each other just because it's kind of like a partnership. But sometimes they still prefer to speak the regular way as if they weren't dating, as if they were just acquaintances. It happens. So ask. And the regular Yule form, you might think that it's going to be polite since it has a soft and respectful feel. But there's also something called honorific speech and humble speech that if it's not added onto your sentence, if it's not correctly attached, your sentences actually won't sound polite enough unless you're also using honorifics and humble speech when you're talking about someone else. So if you're talking about someone else, now this is not just, oh, hey, the teacher over there, you know, they're busy right now. That works, but it's also anytime you're asking a question about someone. In fact, if I ask you a question, do you know where is the supermarket? Or do you know where the convenience store is? I would say 편의점이 어디 있는지. There are two options, actually. So let me give you an example. I'm going to use black because it's easier to see. So if you're asking someone where the convenience store is, you could say 편의점이 어디 있는지. Do you know? Now, this is a question, but technically you're technically talking about someone else by saying you know or you don't know. So if you're asking a question to someone else directly, you would still use honorifics or humble speech or whatever because you're not talking about yourself. You're asking someone a question. So typically when you're using questions, the standard you form might not be enough. Obviously, you're not going to say 알아? 어디 있는지 알아? To a stranger unless they're like a very small child. 알아? 알아요? It has a soft, respectful feel, but it doesn't show respect toward the person you're talking about. So you might still add, you should add, honorific speech whenever you're talking about someone else. And we don't have time to talk about all this in this lesson. Watch my separate live stream about honorific speech, or even just watch my beginner course. I also go over it in there. You would say 아세요, which is the honorific form, 세요, but it still is technically the 요 form. It ends with 요. So if you're asking questions to other people, or you're talking about someone else, including questions, just the 요 form might not be polite enough, is what I wanted to say. Okay. So another example might be if you're talking about your teacher or your boss, or in this case, a stranger, anyone you want to show extra respect toward, then you want to make sure you're using honorific speech or humble speech whenever you're talking about them or directly asking them a question about themselves. Like, do you know? If you wanted to say the teacher knows, you want to say the teacher knows something. 선생님은 알아 sounds disrespectful because one is whoever you're talking with, it's casual speech. So maybe you're talking with your best friend, then you can say 알아, sure. But if you just want to say something normally to someone else, you might say 알아요. It's okay, but it would be more polite since you're talking about someone that you would show extra respect toward. 아세요. 선생님은 아세요. The teacher knows. 아세요. So you're using honorific speech, but you're still using the 요 form. Okay. So yeah, one of the most common situations where you're going to need to use more polite speech is when you're talking about a teacher or a boss or a stranger. So anytime you want to show extra respect towards someone else that you're talking about, you're also going to add honorific speech. Again, we're not covering that in this lesson. Okay. But when in doubt, at least use the 요 form. Don't use casual speech. Don't go to casual speech first. It's a very high chance it's going to be rude. Practice with at least the 요 form. That way you can make it confidently, because it's easier to chop off the 요 and get casual than it is to add the 요, because you might be speaking and you'll forget to add it. It's better to forget and be too polite than to be too casual. Okay, so the 요 form, actually, there isn't really too much more we have to talk about because that's pretty much how it works. There's more to talk about. In fact, we're not even done with the first page. The second page we have, which is the last page, This second page is all for formal speech, because formal speech is the real big topic for today. But before I go on to the topic of formal speech, let me take a couple questions. Oh yeah, Tanya also says writing papers. Yes. Tanya says, got to go for a bit. Have a good night if I don't come back before the end of the class. Yeah, hopefully I can see you again for this class. Guardbot says, rather than describing it as someone who you want to show respect to, it might be more accurate to say someone who you are not overly familiar with. That's not correct, because you can be overly familiar with someone, but you still show extra respect to them. You can have a friend, a good friend, who is younger than you, and you still use honorific speech to them, or you still use the you form to them, because it's how it feels. Like I said, the important thing is about how does the form feel? It's not always about the rules, like, oh, this person's older, I have to do this. These rules come about because of the feeling. So if you focus on the feeling, that will help you to use it in more situations without having to memorize like a million rules. Like, oh, well, this friend is this situation and I've known them for 3 years, but they're my junior at work, but they're the brother of the boss. You don't have to think about these weird situations because you know the feeling of it. Again, respectful, but soft. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's correct to be someone you're overly familiar with, just because you can be overly familiar with this person and still be polite to them. For example, if I know another YouTube Korean teacher, I still would use respectful speech to them, even though I'm overly familiar. Like, I know them, I watched a bunch of their videos. I would still use honorifics to them, because it doesn't matter how well I know them. Our relationship isn't like, we're not best friends, like calling each other every day relationship like that, but I do know them. I would consider them a friend. So yeah, it really depends. It's not so much about being familiar with someone. It's the feeling you want to convey as well. Hope says, I have a hard time speaking casually. My brain just adds the you automatically. Yeah, that's fine. That's better than not adding the you, really. It doesn't sound rude if you don't add the you, but it can sound like if someone says something casual when they shouldn't have. Then if I'm listening to them while they're speaking, I kind of feel like, please, like Korean native who's listening, please understand them. Please understand them. They didn't mean it like that. Kai says, I'll have to go get over the hurdle when asking someone their age. So usually you don't have to. As far as how you speak with someone, if they're clearly younger than you or they're clearly older than you, you don't have to ask. But it's when it's kind of like, it's kind of 애매해. It's kind of 애매하다. Like, it's vague. You don't really know. You're not certain. At those times, then you would say, what year were you born? Actually, this isn't part of the lesson, but I'll just give it to you because it's related. 몇 is how many or what with a number. 년생 is literally year, birth. So what year of birth are you? You can either use honorific speech, 이세요? 몇 년생이세요? Or regular you form, 몇 년생이에요? Like, again, this has a soft, respectful feel. It's probably not going to be rude, but if you don't know which one to use, if you want to show extra respect and use honorifics whenever you can. So 몇 년생이세요? Like, especially if you're asking someone in this in the first place, you're probably not close enough with them anyway. You might want to be extra careful. If you already know them and you kind of like want to you're like, oh, I think they're the same age as me. Let me just check. You can just use this. But if it's clear, oh, they're probably someone I need to be extra respectful for. Let me just to be safe. So literally what year are you born? And then they're going to give you the last 2 digits of the year that they were born. That's a common expression that I use to people. Whenever I meet someone for the first time and we've talked a little bit and I get the feeling like, oh, I might need to be speaking with them. Like, they're not just someone I'm passing by, but this is someone I'm going to be hanging out with for the next few hours. 혹시 몇 년생이세요? Like, what year were you born? And then they'll be like, oh, I was born in this. Like, oh, really? Oh, me too, or something. Or, oh, I see. Okay. Like, that's really young, or that's older than I thought. Like, whatever. You're not asking them, how old are you directly? But if they don't want to tell you, just assume it's more than you and move on and just be polite with them. Just like, if you feel like, oh, I don't really want to ask them, they're going to be shy and embarrassed. I will say, just like in the US, it's easier to ask a guy their age than it is to ask a girl their age. So be a little bit careful about that. If there's someone who seems like, I really don't want to generalize because it sounds a bit mean if I say, oh, only women care about ages. It's not really true. But typically you'll find if someone's getting close to their mid to late 30s and above until like, but it's not forever, but like until maybe their 60s-ish, they might care a little bit more about that question. They might not want to answer it because they kind of feel, shy. Oh, I don't want to reveal I'm actually 45. They might think I'm 30 if I don't tell them, like, maybe. Older people usually don't have any issues with this, both genders. And guys are typically, we care less about this. It's the same in Korean as well. So I'm trying to be a little bit careful with my words right now. I don't really want to say something that's, not true, but also doesn't sound nice. But yeah, generally though, if you have a bad feeling, like, oh, I don't really want to ask him, I think they might be offended. I don't mean it like that. I don't want them to be offended. Just assume they're older than you. Just speak politely with them. And then if you actually become close with them, like you're hanging out or something like that, you see them often, then at that point, they're not going to care. They'll probably be like, oh yeah, sure, I'll tell you because we know each other now. They just might not want to tell a stranger who asked them the very first time they meet. Like, how old are you? It's like, oh, okay, I don't really want to say. P-media, it's a secret like that. Hopefully that answers a question that, well, it's not really a question, but a comment. Aniki said, I've seen Koreans say something along the lines of 바쁘시네 when talking directly to someone because they're talking to themselves. They're talking to themselves. Remember, the Yule form shows that soft, respectful feeling to the person that you are speaking to. If you're not speaking to them, you're speaking to yourself, you wouldn't show that level of politeness. But honorific speech, and again, I don't want to try to explain this because it's really its own lesson. I talk about this in the honorific speech lesson, is about who you're talking about. So you're speaking to yourself in front of them, and you use honorific speech to talk about them because you know they're listening. You know that they know you're talking out loud about them. They heard you, but you want to be talking to yourself. Oh, 바쁘시네. Like, I guess they're busy. Because Koreans do something that we think is really weird, and that is monologue. They talk to themselves out loud a lot. And we do this much less. If I walk around, oh man, I'm so hungry. Oh, I'm so hungry. Oh, I got to eat a cheeseburger after I finish this live stream. It's like, who are you talking to, bro? We don't do this so much in American culture. I don't know if they do this much in like European culture either, but we tend to think in our heads, and Koreans tend to think that, well, at least in public, tend to think out loud more. So you'll hear their thoughts, and their thoughts will come out with honorifics because they know someone might listen who knows what they're talking about, but they're not going to use polite speech because they're talking with themselves. If they said, oh, 바쁘시네요, that's like, oh, you are really busy. Versus, oh, 바쁘시네, like, oh, I guess they're really busy, man. Or, man, they're busy. It's kind of like that. We don't really do this so much in English. We just, if we're talking out loud about someone else, we just address it to them. Dang, you're really busy, huh? Like that. We would just say it directly. We wouldn't really go, I guess they're too busy. Because it sounds like I'm right here, talk to me. But in Korean, it's not quite like that. It's like, oh, they're just talking to themselves. So you're expressing something that both people know, but you're not directing it at them. So this lets you get away with sometimes making jokes or like swears, not quite swears, but like harsh speech that you can't get away with directed at the person, that you can jokingly say to yourself. This is a whole other topic, but you might hear Koreans say expressions that you know to be casual speech or even like slang or like, yeah, I'll say that. In a situation where you don't think that's appropriate. Like, wait, how could you use slang and casual speech when you're talking with this person who you've never met, who is the CEO of a company? You can do it because you're doing this. It's a one secret. Korean teachers hate it. They don't want you to know one little secret. All you do is turn your head and you don't add any politeness to it because it's now assumed you're talking to yourself, and you can get away with a lot of comedy, slang, impolite speech by simply not directing it at them. It's just you're talking to yourself. But be careful with that. So anyway, that's a little secret. Okay, moving on. So I don't want you to try that, but pay attention to that and you'll see it all the time, all the time. If someone's politeness level suddenly drops, but they're speaking really politely and suddenly it like, boom, it drops and you're like, wait, are they mixing? They're not mixing. They're simply talking to themselves in that moment. Okay. This pen is dying. This might be its last leg. Okay. Formal speech. What is formal speech? Well, formal speech typically is used to refer to the form 니다, or when you're asking a question, 니까. Like 합니다, 합니까, 먹습니다, 먹습니까, 씁니다, 씁니까, like that. Now, a common misconception is that formal speech is only used in formal or only in official situations. Like you're only going to use it when you're giving a speech. You're only going to use it when you're writing a business letter and you don't need to know it and it's useless. That's not true. It's used everywhere. Now, first, we're going to talk about conjugation briefly. Now, we're not going to talk about every conjugation rule for this form because you can learn it a lot of places online, but really briefly, because the conjugation is so simple, I'll teach it to you right now anyway. You take a verb stem. That's just the verb, like 하다, that's just the verb minus the 다 at the end. So you're left with ha, that's it. So you take a verb stem, and if that verb stem ends with a vowel, you'll attach piup, this letter, and 니다. And if it ends with a consonant, then you'll attach 습니다, 씁니다. So 습니다, pronounced as 씀 with this letter, 미음, 씁니다, due to sound change rules. Okay. Or if this consonant happens to be this letter, the L letter, the lir, then you drop it and you attach this one. So that's the main exception that you have to know. There are a couple other small exceptions too. We're not going to be going over those. This is the majority. This is pretty much all you need to know to conjugate this form. So the other thing you need to know is that this is for statements. This is for saying something, like something, 해요, the end. Someone does something. If you want to make this into a question, instead of 니, 다, you use 니, 까. But the rules are the exact same. So 하다 becomes 니다, 합니다. And as a question, 합니까, 합니까. 먹다, to eat. The verb stem is 먹. 먹 ends in a consonant, 먹습니다. Or question, 먹습니까? 놀다, to hang out or to play, is 놀. It ends in a lir, so you remove it. You attach this. Nope. 놉니다, 놉니까. That's all there is to it. Okay. So let's get into the most important thing you need to learn about this form. The feel. Does anyone know what the feel of formal speech is going to be? I said that the yo form, so regular informal speech, has a soft, respectful feel. What does formal speech feel like? Can anyone guess what's going to go up here? It's one word, something and respectful. I said soft, so maybe that'll give you a hint. I don't know. Ikara asks, are we supposed to use heyoche, or you're technically supposed to use writing form, which is to say it as simply as possible, plain form. Although writing form includes a few other things as well, but typically it's going to be plain form. Aniki says, oh, that's right. That's what your question was from before. Kai says 1 to 2 years is enough of an addition. Even, 1 year. You could be born in 1986 and you meet someone who's born in 1987 or 1985, 1 year difference, and you have to speak differently to them. ABR19 says, me and my friend who also in Korean are so bad with 반말, we're also trying to learn between 반말 and 존댓말. And there's actually a 반존대, or yeah, there's a mixture of those two, which also exists. A mixture of casual and polite speech. And I actually talk about that in my Master Politeness Levels course if you want to learn about it in detail, but there is a way to mix them. Firm, strict, strong. Yes, one of you hard, one of you is correct. Although it's kind of all the same thing. So the Yule form had a soft, respectful feeling. Formal speech has a strong, respectful feeling, but both of them have a respectful feeling. It's just the amount. It's not the amount of respectfulness. It's how does that respectfulness feel? Is it softly being respectful, or is it strongly being respectful? Think about that for a second, because this feeling is, as I said before, this feeling is more important than the actual rules about when and where do you use them. Those rules are kind of help keep you in check. Like, oh, this person's older, so therefore I should be more polite to them. But there are a million situations that can exist within there, different ages and different work positions. And, oh, I've known this person for 5 years, but all of these things are based on that feeling. A soft, respectful feeling versus a strong, respectful feeling. Okay. So because of this, the nida or nika forms can sound as if these forms can sound as if you're speaking officially, but they don't have to. Just when someone's speaking officially, they want to sound strong and respectful. So because of that, it sounds like it's more respectful than the Yule form, which is why many people come to the wrong conclusion that it's just way too polite. It's way too official and formal. You're never going to want to use this because, oh, it always sounds official. It always sounds formal. That's not true. It sounds strong and respectful. It does not always sound official, but it tends to get used officially a lot. So you're going to hear this used whenever someone's making an official announcement or an official speech. That also includes if someone's writing a business letter. Like if you're writing a business letter to your customer, you want to also sound strong and respectful. Now, you're not going to use this if you're writing a letter to your friends and if you're giving an announcement to your friends, because you don't need to sound strong and respectful when you're talking to your friends. You would just speak normally. But people you don't know, strangers, your clients, you do want to sound very respectful, strong and respectful. You're probably going to hear this when you're meeting your new boss or meeting a new teacher for the very first time, as well as if you're meeting parents-in-law for the very first time. Now, anyone that you want to impress, you're going to want to speak like this as well. If you want them to be impressed with your first impression, you might want to speak like this. You might want to sound, professional. Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, it's very nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. My name is Billy. Yes, I am a Korean teacher. I've been teaching Korean on YouTube for the past, now it's been over 12 years, and I'm looking forward to helping you to learn Korean. This sort of feeling, strong, respectful feeling, is what you want when you're meeting new people. Especially, your boss. If you're meeting parents-in-law for the first time, you probably also want to say, yes, my name is Billy. I have been dating your daughter for the past 75 years, right under your nose, and you've never been aware of it once. But I'd like to announce my, you can sound like that. You can say whatever you want, but you're going to sound really polite. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to always be speaking to your parents-in-law like that. Obviously, would you? Like, in what situation would you speak really politely like that to someone else every single day? Maybe your boss, right? But you're not going to be speaking to your parents-in-law like that all the time. You just want a good first impression. Yes, so it's very nice to meet you. My name is Billy. I'm a Korean teacher, like that. But then after you get to know them, then you can be like, oh, hey, yes. Oh, I was talking with your daughter the other day, and we were thinking of all going together and seeing a movie. You don't need to be formal after you've done that first impression. But in the very beginning, you do. And sometimes you might need to keep doing that. So in business situations. So yeah, introducing yourself in any formal situation, you're going to use formal speech. Another situation is in the Korean Army. That's because of rules that they have in the Korean Army that you have to speak formally because they just want to have everyone on the same page. And another common situation that many people forget, not just the Army, but any sort of social worker, you're going to want to speak like this to them. You might want to speak like this to them. Doesn't mean you have to, but if you're speaking to someone who's they're working, but their job is serving you, like they're serving people, you probably want to speak to them formally because it sounds like you're respecting what they're doing for you. Like saying, maybe you're walking in let's say an official museum in Korea and you see a worker there and, try to say, excuse me, are there any available seats for the 5:30 show? You could speak to them formally. 있습니까? 아십니까? Because it sounds like you're being very respectful of what they're doing for you versus like, oh, hey, by the way, are there any other seats for the 6 o'clock show? Like, it's okay to do that. But if you want to show extra respect, you might want to use the formal form when you're speaking to anyone who's a social worker. Strangers as well. You don't have to, but if you want to give that sort of strong, respectful feel when you're talking to someone, you might want to use it. And regardless of what the situation is and how you want to sound necessarily, there are some common phrases in Korean that use formal speech that you're going to use regardless of what level of speaking you're using. These are just simply, they're technically formal, but they're only used to be the basic level of polite. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Can anyone think of any expressions, any phrases that are just polite, but that use formal speech? Because I'll let you know, they're only technically formal, but they're actually, the feeling of them is just basic politeness. Bedberry says doctors or nurses. Do you want to sound strong and respectful to a doctor or a nurse? How do you want to sound like, oh yes, I have prepared everything for the appointment tomorrow. Could you please let me know when is my next appointment? Do you need to talk like that at the doctor's office? You don't. You could, but you don't. You just, because it depends who you're talking with. You're talking with a doctor, they're usually just going to talk to you normally. They're not going to be like, well, we have some new news about the forms we have completed. They're just going to tell you straight. They're just going to say, hey, yeah, we got your data back. It's what is it? What is it that I always said on House? Lupus? They're just going to talk to you straight. They're just going to tell you, they're going to talk to you normally. So it might feel a little bit awkward if the doctor's speaking to you in a normal tone, softly with the you form, but you're replying with a strong type of speech. It won't match. So you probably wouldn't. The receptionist, however, oh, how was your appointment today? Can we schedule you for next week on Tuesday? You could reply, oh, by chance, do you have any availability on Wednesday? You could reply like that, or you can just say, oh, do you have an appointment on Wednesday? It's up to you. Yeah, lexica, 감사합니다, 감사합니다 is only one. There are a lot of these. There are a lot of expressions that are technically made with formal speech, but people don't consider them to be formal. They just consider them to be the basic level of polite. And in fact, if you don't use their formal versions, it sounds impolite if it's a situation where you should be polite. If a stranger gives you something and you say, not 감사합니다, but you say 감사해요, which also comes from the same verb, and it should be polite, right? It's the you form. It sounds impolite. It sounds like you're not appreciative because it doesn't have that polite feel. So these are expressions that, although, yeah, they're formal, they're not considered to be part of the regular formal speech. You use them anytime you want to be polite. And there are several of these. you're apologizing to your friend, you don't need 죄송합니다 because you don't need to be extra polite to your friend. You can use 죄송해요 or 죄송해. 아 진짜 미안해요, 미안해. Like that. It's okay. 죄송합니다. Good. I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. I'm sorry. It sounds polite. 만나서 반갑습니다. Nice to meet you. If you were to meet your new boss, 만나서 반가워요. Don't do it. It sounds like you're not sincere. Hey, nice to meet you. Like, it's polite if you're meeting someone who seems to be the same age as you. 만나서 반가워요. Like, you're being friendly, but you're not going to be casual yet. But you want to sound just regular, soft, and polite. But anytime you need to be polite, 만나서 반갑습니다. You'll say this to a class, even though the class is not like, it's not a formal class, you still say 반갑습니다. Whenever you get food, I don't have space, so I won't write the next one, but 잘 먹겠습니다 before you eat something, unless it's like your friend or a close coworker who bought it for you, who you just speak normally with anyway. 잘 먹겠습니다. Someone else, stranger buys you food. That would be really weird. Someone else you don't know very well buys you food. 잘 먹겠습니다. Thank you for the food. 잘 먹을게요 would be the normal version, which you could use for your friends, but you wouldn't use 잘 먹을게요 when someone who you met like earlier in the day or something, you're not close with, buys food for a bunch of people. You wouldn't say 잘 먹을게요. That would be like kind of rude. Like, all right, hey, thanks for the food, bro. Thanks for the grub. 잘 먹겠습니다. And then after you finished eating, same thing. 잘 먹었습니다. Thanks for the food. Same thing. And then one more really common expression. Maybe not really common, but at least once a year. 생일 축하합니다. You would not use 생일 축하해요 unless you're already well acquainted. Like friends, not the same age, but you're close. Then you can say, 생일 축하해요, or 생일 축하해 if you're close friends, like that. 생일 축하합니다 for anyone else if you're not already close with them. Happy birthday. Or even you can be more polite. You can use humble speech. 생일 축하드립니다 if you want, but 축하합니다 is usually okay. Okay. And there are some others as well. But yeah, if you were to not use these formal versions, it doesn't sound polite. So anytime you need to be polite at all, use the full formal version of these expressions. Okay. And I should also mention, I mentioned this briefly with the you form, but you can also add honorific speech to formal speech as well, not only informal speech. Like 하다, you could have like 하세요 for the you form, but you can also have it with formal speech. 하시 is what you normally get, 하시다. So you get the verb stem. It ends with a vowel, so you attach this. 하십니다 or 하십니까. Same thing. Now you can have honorific speech added to your formal speech. If you're speaking to someone who you want to sound strong and respectful toward, but you're speaking about someone else who you want to show extra respect toward, then you can do this. Okay. Really quickly, I want to go over future tense and past tense formal speech. Future tense, you have two options. Okay, these pens are really bothering me. Give me, both of these are like dying. Give me like 20 seconds. Let me get rid of both of these pens. In the trash can. Okay, I'll be right back. Any quick questions, put them in the chat. I'm going to switch pens. Okay. Got some new pens. Let's check the chat. Kai says, when making my own sentences to practice, how can I properly check to make sure if I'm doing it correctly? Yeah, you can't trust Google Translate or Bing or anything like that to tell you if it's correct. If you want to know for sure, you have to ask a teacher. You can ask like ChatGPT, does my sentence make sense? Can you translate this sentence in English? But I've had some times where I'll check a sentence with it as well for fun to see, like a longer sentence, to see can it do it, and it'll say it's correct even if it's like not perfect. You can test that, like, is this sentence perfect? It'll be like, oh yes, it's perfect. It doesn't know. You really just need to have someone to check it with. But what can help you though is if you're making shorter sentences, it can be a little easier to check because ChatGPT or Google Translate can do this just fine. Papago as well for Naver. If it's a short sentence, you can usually trust it because there isn't too much to mess up on a really short sentence. But as soon as you start having like sentence connectors and like two parts of a sentence, that's when it can get all messed up. So really short sentences, probably okay. If you really want to know for sure though, just ask a native speaker. Make a friend you can ask like, hey, can I run a few sentences by you? Can you just tell me if it's okay or not? Okay, so there are two ways to make the future tense with formal speech. The first one is by using the standard koshida, future tense form. You already know this one, like 할 거야, 할 거예요. 할 거예요. That form is the regular. You can do the same form with the future tense as well. How do you do it? Well, this ida, you just conjugate it to formal speech. So you get 할 것입니다. 입니다, right? Or this is commonly cut out when you're using it for conjugation. It's the same thing with 할 거야. It's not 할 것이야, but you can just do 할 거야. So the same thing here. 할 겁니다. 먹을 for 먹다, to eat. 먹을 겁니다. So 겁니다 is a common future tense version of this form. But there's a second one, which you probably know as well, and that is the 겠다 ending. Oops. 걷다 is actually a dialect version. 겠다 is, all you do is you take a verb stem. There are no exceptions to this. No rules you have to learn for this one, which is great. Any verb ending doesn't matter. You just attach 겠다 and then you conjugate this. So this will be 겠습니다. When it's used in the formal speech. When it's used with formal speech, it's 겠습니다 or 겠습니까 for a question. And that's all. So what's the difference between 겠다 and 것이다? Well, there are a few differences, but the main difference is that this 겠다 form is more formal sounding. So as a result, when you're saying, I will do something, and you're using the 겠다 form, most of the time, it's going to become 겠습니다. You're not going to see 겠어요 with 요 form very much. Most of the time, it's natural with get to be used with 습니다 if it's being used as the future tense. Now, there's another usage for this, which we're not going to cover today, to mean would, like it must be, or I'm sure it would be, that must have been difficult, that would be hard. Would, if it's used for would, it can be used with any of these. But if you're using it for the future tense, 99% of the time, not always, but almost always, it will be 겠습니다 or 겠습니까, as is, used with the formal form like this. But yeah, it's more formal sounding than the 것이다 form, but that's pretty much it. So if you want to be as formal as possible, use this one if you're saying, I will do it. I shall do that. I'm going to do that. I want you to make, actually, let me give you the past tense, and then I'm going to have you do a past tense and a present tense example for me. Future tense, past tense, and present tense. Future tense, past, yes. So one more, okay. So now I'm going to do past tense. Past tense is really simple. You also have two options. If you're familiar with it, you can also use the past tense 것이다 form. For example, 하다 would become 한 거예요 or 한 거야, like that. You can say 한 것입니다 or just 한 겁니다. Exactly the same. If you're not familiar with this past tense form, don't worry about it. But there's another, you can also do past tense with 것이다, just like you can for future tense. So 한 거야, 한 겁니다. Past tense, polite, formal speech. So you can use this form if you already know it. And you can use that with regular verbs too. It's not exclusive to formal speech. Or here we go. Okay. Or there's a really easy one. You get the past tense verb stem and you attach 씁니다. So 하다. 하다, the normal past tense, is that. As soon as you get to these letters, you have the past tense stem. So 했어요, for example. 했어요. 했습니다. You're done. There are no rules you need to learn because when you have this, you've already applied any conjugation rules already. In order to get this, you've already applied all the conjugation rules, any exceptions to get here. So this is done. So you get this and you attach 씁니다. 했습니다. That's it. 했습니다. 했습니까? I did it. Did you do it? That's it. Someone mentioned they use Papa Go. Yeah, that's fine. Just, yeah, keep in mind that all of them have the same problems. None of them are really reliable, but it doesn't mean they're useless, but just don't rely on it. And I'm not saying that as a teacher. I'm saying that if I were a student too, because I can use it successfully because I already know when it's wrong. If I use it, it can be a great tool for me. Someone who already speaks Korean. It's a great tool because it saves a lot of time. But if you're a student, you wouldn't know when it makes mistakes. Whereas I would know. Oh, wait, why is it saying that? Oh, it's a little weird. Or, oh, it's close. Just like a real person. ChatGPT or Google Translate or whatever, they can make mistakes. So, yeah, don't trust it 100%. Let's see. Okay. So, before we go on how to mix informal and formal speech, I want you to pick a verb. Any verb. I'll write a few on the board in case you need some ideas, but first think of your own verb. Any verb, I want you to think of a verb, and I want you to conjugate it in present tense, in formal speech, present tense, future tense, and past tense. You can pick any way to translate it. I mean, you can pick any form. You can use the 것이다 form or 겠다 for the future. You can use 것이다 or the like 했습니다 for the past tense. Any form you want. I mean, sorry, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. But I need 3 for each verb. And pick one verb. If you don't know what verbs to use, I'll write a few on the board in case you don't know. But pick your own if you already do know. 가르치다, to teach. 좋아하다. You only have to do one. Just, I'm giving you some extra examples. 좋아하다, to like. 살다, to live. Let's do 없다, to not exist. These are just a few examples if you can't think of a verb. Feel free to use one of these. If not, your own is fine. So I want 3 sentences. Actually 3 things, 3 conjugations for past, present, and future tense. Kai says, when making my own sentences, oh, that's right. That was a question I just did. I saw a Korean use 합니다요. No. Unless, if you give me the sentence, I can tell you exactly why they would have said that. But no. 아내키, 납치당합니다. 당했습니다 and 당하겠습니다. Okay. Perfect. I mean, perfect. 앉습니다. 앉아. Oh, Andrea. So for the past, it's 앉아. For 앉았어요. So 앉아. I'm not sure. You might have just had a typo there for 앉아. So 앉았습니다. 앉겠습니다. Other than that, perfect. Lexica, 산책하다, 산책. Check the yeah. Check the 하습니다. Check that one. It's not 하습니다 because remember it ends in a vowel. It's okay. Try it again, Lexica. I'll pretend you didn't even do it. I'll give you one more chance. So yeah, I want to have 3 examples with any verb you pick. You can pick one of the ones I wrote up here or pick your own. Just don't pick your nose. Well, I don't know, do. I don't really care. Whatever you do in your own free time. 먹습니다. 먹었습니다. 먹겠습니다. Perfect. So amazing. Andrea thinks I did it wrong. Oh, okay. Well, then it's good you picked that one. Yeah, since it has a as the vowel, then you would also attach for the conjugation. 오늘은 휴방입니다요. Yeah, no, they're just being funny. I'm gonna guess that's a Twitch streamer that made a post. Yeah, I'd put money on it that it's a Twitch streamer. Or actually it could be Africa or one of those other websites because one of those ones that has Koreans on it. 씹었습니다. vikhelm. So 씹다 ends in a consonant. So you wouldn't add just 니다. So you're missing something there. But the other ones, 씹겠습니다 and 씹었습니다 are perfect. 산책합니다. 산책할 겁니다. 산책했습니다. Perfect, Lexica. I mean, perfect. Yeah, Cosmo, streamers use a lot of wrong Korean that's common in streaming communities to be funny. Because it sounds cutesy. Like you don't want to just make like really official announcements. But if everyone's saying the exact same thing, 오늘 휴방입니다, or whatever, like 오방원, like they'll say these different things, like today's broadcast is over. They have all these shortening words and weird words that they use specifically for the community. So you can kind of feel like a special part of the community for knowing what those mean. But it doesn't always represent regular Korean. And it wouldn't be used in speech. It's more of like a written thing to be funny. And there's a lot of Korean that's used online to be fun that you wouldn't say out loud. And we do that in English too. Like you don't say LOL when someone says a funny joke unless you're kind of saying it sarcastically, like, oh, LOL, like you're making fun of it by saying it's not funny. Or BRB, like no one says BRB in real life. You know, I'm going AFK for a second. Like you can say it, but it kind of sounds goofy. Like you're not being serious if you say someone's AFK. You're kind of mockingly making light of whatever it is that you're talking about. So it's kind of the same in Korean. Aniki says, wasn't Twitch shut down in Korea? Yeah, they did, but that doesn't mean you can't stream. It just means that they got rid of the abilities for, I believe it's like they can't connect it to their Korean bank account. And there aren't the servers in Korea to support it. So that means if you want to stream from Korea, you would either be relying on the servers outside of Korea and in a bank account that you can receive donations from outside of Korea as well. And you'd have to have the forms to apply for the partnership outside of Korea. So like someone like me could still do it. A Korean who was born in the US or another country could still do it when they go back to Korea, but it significantly decreased the number of streamers that are on Twitch in Korea. I don't know all the details because I don't stream on Twitch, but that's just what I would assume happened. Okay. All right. So let me check now. Okay. If anyone else wants to try, feel free. I might check it later as well. So now let's talk about one more thing, and that is mixing informal speech and formal speech, because you can commonly mix informal speech with informal speech. If you are in a situation where you're using formal speech, you don't need to constantly convey a strong, respectful feel the entire conversation. With exceptions, if you're giving like an official speech, right, you probably would always keep that feeling up. If you're writing an official business letter to your customers, you probably would keep it formal the whole way through. But if you're in a situation where you normally would speak formally with someone, you don't want to keep it all the way. You don't want to keep that tension high, that strong, respectful feel the entire conversation, right? From beginning to end, because it just sounds a little bit stiff. 아닙니다. 저는 안 했습니다. Like the whole time can sound a bit like you're distancing yourself. Yeah, you're being respectful. You're being strong and respectful, but do you need to stay strong and respectful the entire time? So often you'll hear people speaking when they're speaking formally. They'll drop their formality for some parts because they don't want the entire thing to sound really stiff. They want it to sound respectful and strong, but sometimes a little soft, but overall respectful. So you'll commonly hear people mixing both of these. And when someone's speaking just the yo form, you might hear them break and suddenly get a little bit more strong because they want to be extra respectful when they say something. So if you hear them getting mixed, it only has to do with that feeling that I talked about. The yo form is like a regular soft feeling, sounds soft. And the nida or nika endings have a strong feeling to them. So when you're speaking really soft and respectfully, but then sometimes, let's speak a little bit more respectfully about this, and then back down like that. So yeah, only using formal speech if you're speaking formally can sound a bit too stiff, and only using informal speech can sound a bit too relaxed, depending on what you're talking about. Or actually, depending on who you're talking with, I should say, because it doesn't necessarily matter who you're talking about. That would be honorifics. So it's fine to mix formal and informal speech together at different amounts, depending on whatever feel you want. But again, if it's a very official situation, you probably wouldn't mix it. And if you're talking with your friend, you're probably not going to mix it. But let's say you're speaking with an acquaintance and you're not close, but you know each other well. You've seen each other like a dozen times. You talk with each other a lot, but you're not friends. You've never really hung out together. You're different ages completely. You're speaking with them only in the you form. It's okay, but sometimes you might want to shake things up and add a little bit more politeness to them, to what you're talking about. You might want to add a little bit more formality so that it sounds more polite when you're speaking with them. And you can do that. Sprinkle in a little bit of formal speech, and it makes it really sound like you're being respectful, but doesn't make it seem like now you're trying to sound official. So keep that in mind. If you see someone else doing it, you don't have to master this. Just telling you this won't let you master how to use it yourself. But if you hear someone else doing it, that's what they're doing. Just know that's what they're doing. They're not messing up and using the wrong form, or that doesn't mean that, they said formal speech. That means maybe I should be using formal speech. It's just, that's all they're doing. They're trying to mix up that feel a little bit. They don't want it to sound too soft. They want it to have a little bit more respect in it. Or vice versa. They don't want it to sound too stiff. They want it to have a little bit of softness to it. So you'll rarely hear something that's 100% formal and 100% yo form. It's mixed. So that's why it's important to know formal speech, because if you're only using the regular informal speech in every situation with everyone except your friends, but let's say you are using honorifics correctly, you could sound a little bit better if sometimes you mixed in a little bit of formal speech when it's appropriate. If you're talking with someone who you could show extra respect toward, like that. Okay. One more thing we have to talk about. This is an advanced note. So if you're a beginner, you don't need this note, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. 존댓말 is a Korean word. It means polite speech. But this just means any speech that's polite. So this can refer to the yo form. It can refer to using honorifics with your speech. Obviously, it wouldn't be casual speech, but anything that's not casual speech is considered 존댓말. So that can also include formal speech. And the reason I'm telling you this is because I've had people ask me, Billy, what are the terms for casual speech, polite speech, honorific speech, humble speech, formal speech, informal speech in Korean? And there are some terms for this in Korean. 격식, 격식체 for formal speech, 비격식체, informal speech. Koreans do not know these terms. The term that Korean people do know is one 존댓말. as well as they know 반말 for casual speech. So you might be thinking, okay, well then 반말 is casual, 존댓말 is what? It's not something that's widely known to Koreans. So when Koreans say 존댓말, they just mean any sort of formal or polite way of speaking. That can be the 요 form. It can be formal speech. Any of these things that we associate with being extra polite. 요 form with honorifics. 존댓말. So just know that the words in Korean that people actually know don't match up with the words that we're using to learn the language, because these terms that we're using, formal speech, informal speech, 요 form, honorifics, all these aren't really used commonly in Korean. So it's kind of useless to learn the technical words for them when no one would know them except maybe another teacher. So just know 존댓말 is polite, 반말 is casual, and that's good. Okay, and if you want to learn more about politeness speech, and if you want to learn more about politeness levels, all of the politeness levels, including more that I didn't even mention today, I have a full course called Master Politeness Levels, which is 24 episodes. It's free. It's on my channel. You can watch it right now. And that goes into detail about literally everything. It's gigantic. It's everything I could possibly think of, every situation for politeness levels. So check that out. It came out, I think, last year. Yeah. Okay. So that is our lesson for today. I'm going to take some questions. Apologize for speaking really quickly during this lesson, but because this topic wasn't a grammar form, like it wasn't like a really quick thing I can put on one page, I had to speak quickly. Otherwise I wouldn't even be able to finish it today. So we didn't get a lot of example sentences. I didn't get any example sentences like I normally would do. Okay, but yeah, feel free, ask. Now I'm going to take some questions for the next 10 minutes or so for our stream today. Someone said, it's not shut down. People can still stream, but can't get paid. Yeah, that's right. Because you wouldn't be able to connect your bank account with it. Unless, like I said, unless you were a Korean who had a bank account outside of Korea that could then connect with Twitch. Like someone like myself, I could go to Korea and still stream on my Twitch channel if I had one and still make money through it. But I wouldn't be able to set it up as a Korean person. Africa TV is more popular for streaming though, so Twitch was losing money, so they stopped the partner program in Korea. The reason they stopped, I believe, is not because of Africa TV at all. The reason that they shut down was unrelated to either of Korea's alternative streaming platforms. There's Africa, there's also Chijijik, which is the Naver's own streaming platform, which also just launched earlier this year, I think, officially. And neither of those influenced the Twitch decision, as far as I know. The Twitch decision has been going on for a long time. Twitch just realized they're not making much money in Korea. They spend a lot of money to operate over there, but they just don't make very much. And at the same time, Twitch was competing with Africa and Chijijik, but Africa was also dying. It's gone up a bit again after the death of Twitch in Korea, but it's still not anything what it used to be. And then Chijijik as well is kind of dying, I've heard. So I think right now Africa became a little more popular after the death of Twitch, but before it wasn't. It's already been going down for a long time. Who is the winner now? I think YouTube actually is where a lot of people are ending up. Africa started going downhill. This is like a whole separate topic. Africa TV is like Korea's original Twitch. It started going downhill, really, I noticed from around 2018, 2019. It's really started to drop off. Because people started moving, Koreans started to move over to YouTube for streaming, and Twitch. And Twitch, though, there are lots of requirements for it. So people might have just went to YouTube in the time being. And the types of streamers on the platforms are different as well. So if you just want a general audience just to kind of upload videos and talk and stuff like that, YouTube would have been a more popular choice. And then I think a lot of people ended up settling with YouTube. And then after that would be Twitch, and then Chijijik, and then Africa before Twitch shut down. But yeah, I'm not an expert about this. This is just my observation as being someone who is aware of the platforms. Sue Amazing says, Master Politeness speech course is nice. You even talked about the Hao form. Yeah, I talk about the archaic grammar forms as well, briefly toward the end. Now, you don't need to know them, but I talk about kind of how they work. Aniki says, when is chirado used in place of regular to form? Just for emphasis. Like pirok. This is a form I haven't taught in a live stream yet, but there is a... pirok is a word that emphasizes the meaning of even in a sentence. So you have pirok, something, something, and then a verb with the to ending, like even if you do something, he to. But there is another verb that you can do. You mentioned it, chirado, which is just a stronger even. So pirok can go together with the stronger even word to mean like, even if you were to do this. It just has more emphasis. Kind of like manyak is with if. It gives a stronger meaning to if. Pirok gives a more strong meaning to even. But I don't think I have a class about that. I might have mentioned it briefly in one of the live streams. You can check the, I'll post it here. I'm not sure if the document will load correctly, but I'll try to send a link in the chat. You can check it there to see if I mentioned it before or not, but it's just more emphatic. You're not going to use it though by itself. I'll say that. You're not going to say something haichirado like by itself too much. It does sound quite strong. Beb Barry says, thanks for saying to drop romanization when practicing Korean. Yes, I will always say that. I've always said that. Definitely do not, I repeat, do not touch romanization when you're learning Korean. Anything beyond when you're learning the alphabet. When you're learning the alphabet, it's fine because you really don't have any reference for the sounds. You need to write something. But beyond the alphabet, once you've learned the alphabet, don't use any romanization for any of the actual language. Not for words, definitely not for sentences. Ikara asked a question. I already answered that, but you'd use munoche, which I cover in my Master Politeness Levels course, the last lesson in that. Raim says the cost was 10 times to operate in Korea compared to other countries. Yeah, I'm not sure the reason for that. I can speculate, but I don't know. My speculation is Korea purposely raised the operational costs recently in order to promote their own services more, because Korea has done that before. They kick out foreign countries, businesses in order to promote their own companies, own countries' companies. That happened with Google Maps. The reason why Google Maps doesn't work well in Korea is because they're purposely pushing it out. They don't want it to operate in Korea. They want to make sure that they can give the whole ecosystem to their own country. Whether that's a good or a bad thing, I don't know. I will say Google Maps works better, way better than the Korean navigation systems if you compare them in their separate countries. Google Maps in the US is fantastic. Naver Maps, Kakao Maps in Korea it's okay. But Google Maps doesn't even work in Korea. So you can't compare them in their countries. So stifling competition when the competition is much better? I don't know your views on that. Let me know if you have an opinion on that. But that's what they've typically done with some businesses. So it could be a situation of that as well. They saw a foreign company with Twitch, but they're like, well, let's promote our own. And then they promote their own. And it's like, we have Twitch at home. Twitch at home. Like, it's that sort of situation, I think. But it might not have been due to that. It really might have been normally just the operational costs are much higher over there. Server costs are higher. I don't know how much the server costs are in Korea, though I guess it's not 10 times the price. So maybe there is some other reason. It is in the Torado and Shirado. Oh, it wasn't. Okay. I wasn't. I see. Okay, so I have mentioned it before. I just haven't made a separate class all about it. But yeah, that's all it is. It's just more emphatic. I think Torado is okay to use by itself, but Shirado is less common by itself just because it's even more strong. But you'll see it with Piro, which you also will never see except on like a test or in like someone like making a declaration of something, Declaration of Independence, right? That sort of thing. Okay, I'll take a few more questions for today. Oh, that's sour. Yeah. Okay. Just a few more questions. The questions don't have to be about the class. They can be about anything related to Korea or Korean. And since I'm back from the US now, we're going to be having live streams twice in a row. So there's one today and there's going to be one next Sunday. And then the next Sunday after that will be a break for 1 week. And then again from the next Sunday. So 2 weeks on, 1 week off, 2 weeks on, 1 week off, like that consistently every single week until the next time I go to Korea, which I don't know when it's going to be. At the earliest, I could go to Korea again in November, or I could go to Korea again next year in the summertime. So we'll see. What time KST? What time is what time KST? Nana K says, are the teaching jobs legit? What teaching jobs? You mean English teaching jobs? Yes. There are lots of English teaching jobs in Korea. If by legit you mean like, are there really English teaching jobs in Korea? Yeah, there are a lot. But if by legit you mean you'll make a lot of money, or they're fun jobs, or they're easy jobs, no, they are not very good jobs. People who do English teaching in Korea, though, aren't doing it because they want to teach English. They're just doing it as an in so that they can live in Korea. And so that they can afford to live in Korea, because most people don't have like tens of thousands of dollars saved up that they can just move to Korea and live there. You need to have money, a source of income while you're there. But from what I've heard is none of them are enjoyable jobs. It's hard work. And if you get really lucky, you might get a job that's okay. But the majority it's a job. You're working. You have some free time in the evenings. You have some free time on weekends. So you can live in Korea. You can make Korean friends, experience being in Korea completely, and stay there for longer than the visa period would normally allow you, which most countries is like 90 days. Oh, hey, Kai. Thank you, Kai. Oh, wait, you already gave, you gave 2. I was like, wait, I already wrote your name up here. I'll change it to 12. I'll give you 10 more dabs real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Whew. Kai asks the question. I asked earlier about tips to stay motivated when learning Korean, and watching this live reminded me just how much you and your videos motivate me to keep learning. Awesome. I know you hear it a lot, but thank you. You're welcome. And I know you've already heard it too, but thank you. Thank everyone who's donated to me, whether today or any day. Thank you so much. I've been doing this channel now since 2012, and I've been teaching Korean longer than that, but officially on YouTube since 2012. And I've improved a lot. I've learned a lot. I keep learning Korean. I'm a student myself. I still keep studying Korean every single day. I have a vocab book that I go through. I do my vocab review. It's about 60 words a day. Not new words, but like reviewing about 60 flashcards a day. I've done that now every single day. I'm always practicing Korean. And the reason I can still do this, the reason I'm still in the Korean world and I can still improve my Korean and make lessons and all that, is because of everyone's support. Really, it is. I haven't done any of this by myself. Now I do filming and editing and all that stuff by myself, but that means nothing if there aren't people watching and supporting. So everyone out there who watches, you're the reason that I can do this. Yeah, I'm completely supported on top of the backs of right now, 680,000 people who have clicked subscribe and thought, oh, maybe I'll learn Korean, and then forget about it. But still, everyone who's done that, who's watched my videos, subscribed, told their friends that they use Billy's videos, all of that is the reason that I'm still here today. So thank you. Really, thank you. 감사합니다. Aniki says, because I also am, and that's also something I do. Oh, you're talking about Romanian. Okay. Let's see. Nana K says, I want to retire in South Korea. I'm not fluent, so just do not retire in South Korea. That is, if you love Korea, you really like Korea, you know about Korea's culture, you know the good and the bad, live in Korea for a while, work there. I wouldn't retire there because, okay, if you have like a full social network in there, sure. But when you get older, who are you going to be hanging out with? What are you going to be doing when you're older? Like actually retiring. Like we're talking like 67, unless the retirement age goes up more. You're going to be in your 70s. Who do you know? Are you going to be able to make new friends at 70 years old? How? Realistically, how would you be making new friends at 70 years old? Korea is very separated by age as far as like what things you do. Older people that you can make friends, you would do typically like hiking clubs. You could join a hiking club. Are you okay hiking? Maybe you can still make some new friends when you're 70. You're going to need a lot of money to support yourself because you don't have kids in Korea who are going to be supporting you like a Korean would if they retire in Korea. I wouldn't recommend it unless you have a full plan set up. So you know exactly like what are you going to be doing? Who can you meet? Who's going to be there to help you? Now, a nice thing about being in Korea when you're retired is that you'll be able to afford the medical bills because Korea has a single payer health insurance, basically health care for all Koreans, essentially. And it is fantastic. It means you don't have to deal with all the insurance nonsense like, I don't know if this is my primary care doctor or this one's this one and I have approval. I have to call for approval for the procedure and they have to get approval from him. Like calling all these people, different phone numbers on the back of your insurance card, memorizing. None of that. You just have your insurance card. You go to the doctor, you go to the wrong doctor. Oh, I have insurance here. Yeah. And you give it to them. They're like, okay, go ahead. Like it's super simple and affordable for most things. So you're in good hands as far as like medical issues are concerned. You're going to be happy about that. You can go to the doctor anytime you feel. I feel a little bit under the weather today. You can go to the doctor. You're going to pay like $5. Who cares? Go to you sneeze like, achoo. Oh, better go to the doctor. Go to the doctor. No one cares. You can pay $5 to get $3, get medicine and go out, get to talk with the doctor. So it's fabulous for that. But other than the medical side of things and transportation, which is also fantastic. You can get anywhere you want. Unless you have special needs to get around, like a wheelchair, that could be more difficult. So just kind of keep that in mind. Like if you have a real plan for it, I'd say it's okay, but I wouldn't recommend it unless you're really motivated to doing that. Arya says, is it worth traveling to Korea for a K-pop concert? That's up to you. I would do it. I mean, if I had the money to fly to Korea more than once a year, like if I could go to Korea and it wasn't for filming videos, because I go to Korea every year for the summer, but the whole time I'm there, I'm filming videos. This time I filmed 22 videos, at least, maybe 23 videos this time when I was over there in the summer. I'm now starting to edit. If I wasn't going over there to film, I was just going over there to hang out. Oh, that would be fantastic if I could afford to do that. If you can do it, do it. Just give yourself more than a couple days. Give yourself like 10 days. I'd say 10 days minimum. Do a concert, meet some friends, eat some food, go shopping, sleep in one day, like just walk out randomly at night and walk around the city and get something to eat or whatever, get snacks. Yeah, do it. That'll be fun. I don't even go to K-pop concerts, and that would be a fun thing to do. Just go to Korea and go to a K-pop concert. Nana K says, I paid $140 a month. Where did you pay $140 a month and learn more from your videos? Oh, that's great. I've heard that before. I have a lot of free content, so happy to hear that. Sue Amazing says, what's the meaning of 그럴지는? That's 그렇다, to be so. And then the 지, like, is it or whether it is? So whether it is or not, I don't know. It's kind of implying. But it's the future tense form. I have a live stream all about that. If you search whether and if on my live streams, I did like a 2.5 hour, almost 3 hour long live stream where I talked about all the uses of 지. And I think it's a good live stream though. You can watch that. As I learn Korean, I'm teaching what I learned to my 7-year-old niece. If you have a 7-year-old niece and they want to learn Korean, I would just put on some Korean shows for them. Let them listen to a lot of it. At this age, they'll still be able to pick up a little bit from that. They're still quite young for that. The first time someone told me honestly, at 65, something needed to know because the plan was to teach during retirement, but didn't consider the rest. If you want to teach at that age, it's going to be at a school. There are jobs for people who are that age who teach English. I knew a guy who was that age, actually. I think he was probably 65. And if he wasn't, he looked 65. No offense to him, but he totally looked like 65. But you can do it. But it's not going to be something like you can just assume, oh, of course I'll get a job when I'm 65. You just apply. You have to apply to a lot of places and hope that there's an availability where they hire someone that's older. Typically, they hire people that are like straight out of college because you're easy to exploit. They know you can stay up late and work long hours and work on weekends. You're not going to complain because it's your first job. You're in another foreign country. You're trying to start your life off, But for someone who's older and more established, they might not. So you have to find a company that's okay with that. Emily says, I've always wondered why people in K-dramas go to the hospital for the slightest thing. It's because it's cheap. And my wife too, when she's in Korea, if she has her throat's sore, she goes to the hospital. She waits for in the hospital lobby for 5-10 minutes, fills out her information, hands her, actually she doesn't have to hand her insurance card because they can search it by her information. And then meets with the doctor for a few minutes. Doctor says, oh, okay, well, it seems you have a cold. Any other symptoms? Okay, well, you got a cold. Well, here, I'm going to give you this medicine. Take it for 3 days. If you still feel this or you feel worse, come back in. And that's it. And then you go downstairs, you pay the bill to the doctor. It might be like 5,000원 or 3,000원 or something like that. 3,001, which is like $2. And then you go downstairs to the pharmacy, which they'll have a pharmacy in their same building, which makes the prescriptions right away. Wait a few minutes, pick up your prescription, pay another 5,001. So your whole trip is $8 for including medicine for 3 days. And then you go back home, take that medicine. It's the same thing you could do if you had a stockpile of medicine at your house, but you get the assurance of actually talking with a doctor so they can tell you oh, that's actually not a cold. You actually probably have this. So I'm going to give you this medicine to make it, so it doesn't last as long. It's just a huge peace of mind to know that you can go to the hospital. Now you won't be able to do this if you're not living in Korea because you have to be paying for the insurance in order to access the insurance. If you don't have insurance, though, some hospitals will still take people without insurance, but it'll be more expensive, but it's still not going to be anywhere close to what you're thinking about in the US. In the US, I have to pay $60 just to say hi to the doctor, just to get in through the door, right? You have to pay the copay just to meet the doctor. If you cancel your appointment, you still have to pay that $60. I think it's actually $90. Yeah, if it's in network, it's $60. Out of network, it's $90. And you don't know which ones are in network or out network. You have to call and they call, you don't know. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I don't know. You have to call this. You call this people. Oh, I don't know. Let me check and get back to you. It's a huge mess. And then you have to also pay when you get there after your appointment. No, even if you didn't have insurance, it's going to be less than that for the entire visit, which is nice. Nanake says, love the videos with your son. Well, you're going to be happy because I filmed several more videos with him in Korea that I haven't talked about at all, which I'm looking forward to a couple of them that are really fun. Okay. Raim says, can you recommend anything for listening practice that fits in with your first book structure? Well, fits in with any book that you're using would be YouTubers. Find a Korean YouTuber that talks about a topic that you're interested in that doesn't have English subtitles. Don't use anything with English subtitles. And just watch their videos. Just watch a lot of their videos. You'll find that even if you don't understand everything you're saying, after you've watched a lot of their content, you'll get a feel for the way, the manner that they speak. And you'll start to be able to hear a lot of the words more clearly. And I would do that. The more Korean you learn, the more you'll understand. But at first, at least you can kind of get used to the way they're speaking. And then you'll start to hear the words they say. You can look some up and be like, oh yeah, I see, that's what they say. So I would start with that. Just do YouTubers who are in Korea, Korean YouTubers who are doing content on a topic you're interested in. Sepeno. I don't know, but it sounds like a tool. Let me check. I can say I don't know, right? That's allowed, right? Yeah, it's a tool. Yeah, a spanner is a type of wrench. So it's that typical wrench. Like everyone thinks of the word wrench, the handheld wrench. You know, the wrench that you do this, that would just be a spanner. I've also heard the word renchi. I think the last few days, the neighbor's having like some parties or something. It's like, I hear the bass all day. Like that. Or maybe they're exercising and they want to have some like, you know, motivating music. Ness says, I just joined. How much did I miss, guys? Literally the entire class. Now I'm just taking some questions. We're just hanging out. Omar Sam. Oh, is that a YouTuber? Okay. If they are Korean, they speak Korean, then sure. I don't know who it is. Talking about the videos with your son, did you memorize these words that he said in the Gumbariki video, like slingshot? No, I didn't memorize that word because I wasn't writing any of them down while filming. So, no. Is dental the same way as medical? Yes. You also can get, so my son, he has dual citizenship because he's Korean because he's born to a Korean citizen. So he has Korean citizenship, but he's born in the US, so he has American citizenship. Now he'll have to choose one or the other by the time he's old enough to go to the Korean army. If he wants to keep his Korean citizenship, he'll have to do Korean military service. If he doesn't care about that, then he can give that up and just be an American citizen. Probably he'll end up doing that. But right now he's by citizenship, what's called dual citizenship. Yeah. So he has full insurance in Korea, including dental. So we were able to do, we did teeth cleaning for him in Korea. We actually did a few other things, but we also did the first thing we did was we got teeth cleaning for him. So the dentist checked his teeth, full x-rays, you know, cleaned them, did the brushing, checked them out. We sat down and talked with the dentist for like 10 minutes. I think it was like 8,000, 9,001. So like $6, $7. Oh, we went back and we did some cavity fillings after that because he needed some cavities filled just because of the way his teeth are and his genetics are. He's got the rest of my family's side of genetics, which is not good for teeth. Mine, I have the good genes for teeth, but he doesn't. So yeah, he needed some cavities filled, which cost, I think that was like 50 or 60,000 one. So about like 40, $50 for a bunch of cavities filling. But yeah, the cleaning though is like cheap. So yeah, dentist is the same as the regular hospital. You're going to be paying a lot less than you would in the US. Kai says, what's been your favorite topic or lesson you've taught? I like teaching anything that has facets to it. Anything that's not straightforward. I like teaching it so it becomes straightforward. So I think I like teaching like intermediate and advanced topics more than I like teaching beginner topics. Like today's a beginner topic. I think I enjoy intermediate and advanced because I like to demystify them. So it's fun to be able to make something simpler than people think it is. And a lot of stuff in Korean is like that, where you see it and you think, oh, that doesn't make any sense. Why does it mean that? But if you like really break it down, you can make it simple. And then when it's simplified, you're not scared of it anymore. 정류장. It does follow the same. And Kitty Mommy, you can check out the pronunciation of any word in Naver Dictionary. So if you type it into Naver Dictionary, it'll show you right below how to pronounce it. And you can also click, they'll have an audio button, you can hear it, which is actually recorded by a human. It's not artificial intelligence, it's not a robot. It's just a human went through and they had people record every single word that has that. Cook, yeah, cookjuk is like scratching, cookjuk. Or cookda, to scratch. So it's like that scratching sound. Taeyeon said, I gave up my dual citizenship because my friend got stopped at the airport because he was getting near the age to go into the military. Yeah, that's right. Another option, which is an option, although it's a stupid option, but some people have done it, where you don't give up your dual citizenship, you don't go to the military. Instead, you spend like 2 years in prison. It's an option. Although actually, I'm not sure if they would. Yeah, I think you'd still keep your citizenship if you did that way. But yeah, I'm joking. You wouldn't want to do that. But I think that might be another option if there's a third option. If you ask any Korean though, Koreans will usually tell you don't do it. Like as people who've done it, they said unless you have a really good reason to need the Korean citizenship, at that point they say nah, just give it up and come to Korea as a tourist, as a non-citizen, as a visitor, just like a tourist. But you're still, you still speak Korean, but you wouldn't have the full citizenship as you would if you were a citizen. But a lot of people who've done it military service, they're like, don't do it. It's not worth it. Korea with kids. Oh, hey. Aria, you can Youglish to search YouTube subtitles. Yeah, sometimes that works as well. Search for cooking related words. That will give you a bunch of videos that use that word that was detected in the subtitles. Often it'll be like automatic subtitles, but it could be like a creator put them in themselves. And that can be useful for like short phrases too, like expressions. You want to hear people saying an expression. Let's see. Sue Amazing said, did you learn Korean in the intermediate or advanced level that way, like breaking down things, or was it in the hard way, like those grammatical terms or something like that? I learned Korean through the beginning level. I learned it just completely through reading lots of books. But I got my way into the intermediate and advanced level was solely through lots and lots of conversation practice, and then studying to kind of confirm the things that I hear other people say and to learn new words. Like vocabulary, obviously I wouldn't hear enough being used by people in conversations. A lot of words you just don't hear people use enough to learn it yourself. So I would do my own studying, but it was tons and tons of listening practice and speaking practice. And I wasn't even very good at it. I mean, learning is what I mean. I consider myself a pretty slow learner as far as that goes. I just did so much of it that eventually it clicked. Which is part of why I teach Korean the way that I do. I try to break it down as easily as possible, because when I was learning Korean, everything was like mysterious. Like all the lessons would teach things in a really complicated way, like books I had. And they would be like, oh, well, this form is used to indicate that the second part of the sentence follows as a result of the first part of the sentence and is typically used for negative results. Like, who understands that? That's like a dictionary definition, not something a learner can use. So, and it was the same when I asked Koreans, like, when do you use this form? And they're like, oh, well, that form it sounds more polite. Like, and then that's not helpful either. So I kind of want to I'm trying to undo a lot of the bad explanations and teaching that I got when I was first trying to learn Korean. That's kind of my goal is here's a better way to learn some of these things. That's what I try to do for my lessons. Cosma says, or just get a gold medal in the Asian Games and skip military. Yes, that's also a possibility. Although, if you're a K-pop star, you still have to go to military. But I'm going to guarantee you that currently BTS's military experience is not the same as a non-BTS member's military experience. I have a feeling they're not going to come out of the military having hated the experience, like most people, because they're going to get special treatment, which makes sense. You don't want to have you don't want to have news articles coming out saying, oh, BTS Jin was bullied during the military. You don't want that sort of stuff, because it would make Korea look bad. But a lot of people don't enjoy their military service. It's not a very fun thing that you can feel proud about and feel good. It's more people will talk about the bad things. Like, oh, what were you doing? What was your job? Oh, it's really hard. And any Korean who's gone there will tell you that it's a difficult experience. But yeah, there are some ways to not have to go, but it's not something that is open to most people. Aria says, okay, I should probably stop soon. Okay, I'll definitely stop at the top of the hour. So no matter what, I'm stopping at the top of the hour. Aria asks, how do Koreans deal with the smell of garlic? They like it, just not coming from a person, if that helps. However, it doesn't usually come from a person in Korea. except from their mouth. And this is a genetics difference between Europeans and Asians, I'll say. Typically, Koreans have different spots on their body that release different amounts of sweat than European genes do. So me, as an American, I become a typical sweaty American. I can get sweat under my arms, right? I get, for me, I would get a little sweat on my cheeks. Typically my cheeks can sweat. My underarms sweat a lot, mostly, and my legs sweat. Now, I don't sweat on my hands at all, 0, and I don't sweat on my feet at all, which is nice because I don't get smelly feet or sweaty hands. Everyone's a little different in how this works. You know, some people might have like, oh, their necks get really sweaty or their back gets sweaty. I don't have that, but everyone is a little different. Typically, for most Koreans that I found, they don't have the thing where your underarm gets especially sweaty, therefore especially smelly. That doesn't mean Koreans don't get smelly when they sweat, but it's because the sweat comes out of different places often, you don't end up with the same smell amount that you do from someone who sweats mainly underneath their arms. So as a result, until recently, until like maybe 10, 20 years ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago-ish, you wouldn't really find deodorant at a regular Korean store until more recently. It was kind of something you had to go out of your way to find. Because it wasn't really something you needed necessarily if you were Korean, but a foreigner definitely should use something like that. So garlic is where I'm getting to. It's all back to garlic. If you don't smell like sweat because you're not sweating very much under your arms, you're not going to care about eating garlic so much because you only have to worry about it coming out of your breath. Whereas someone like me who loves garlic, but also smells bad if I'm sweaty, I smell like freaking garlic the entire next day. Like, so if I'm eating garlic, yeah, I'm sleeping in a different bed as my wife. I have to be away because I just smell and I can smell it. So I'm careful when I eat garlic. I'll make sure it's like, I don't eat too much because I'll sweat here and then my body will smell like garlic, which is gross. So that's my garlic rant. But Koreans love garlic. Obviously not smelling it from someone, but in the food. It's common to eat raw garlic, grilled garlic, mashed garlic, whatever. Let's see. Ayob BK says, in what order should I learn Korean grammar? Well, I actually have a series for that. Here, I'll post it in the chat. Just start with my beginner course. Everything's in order. And if you finish the beginner course, there is a new course called Korean Conversation Course, which you can follow immediately after finishing that. Or you can go to the Master Politeness Levels course if you want to focus on politeness levels or anything else. But the beginner course is where you can start. It all goes in order. That's if you want something for free. I also have a textbook series. You can use either or you can use them together. The order is different, but the contents is mostly the same. But the books have a little more since there are 3 of them. Okay. Stizer says, did you ever encounter a hurdle when you're early learning you didn't like the way you sounded when you spoke it? Yeah. Because I learned Korean primarily when I was living in Busan, and I was really trying to speak like a regular standard Korean speaker. I don't mean regular as in not weird, but like more common, standard Korean. I was trying to just use standard Korean, but it was hard because a lot of people around me, especially older people, spoke with dialect, specifically Busan dialect, which is different than other dialects. And after my first amount of time in Korea, I still had some aspects of that dialect stuck in the way that I spoke that I was purposely trying to get rid of. And I eventually did, but it took a few years of practice to actually to get rid of it in my natural speech. Pronunciation was a big one. It just takes a long time to get good at pronouncing Korean. No one starts off learning Korean and has great pronunciation. Some people have okay pronunciation. They start off and they sound really good. But I'm talking about like beyond that, like you want to actually sound, you want people to mistake you for being a Korean, which you can do as far as pronunciation goes. That just takes a lot of time and practice. Church Lady says, is it difficult for those of us with regional accents to speak Korean that's understandable? No. Everyone has an accent. That's what I'll say. I'm originally here from Southern California, so I have an accent, even though I don't think I do, right? If you're hearing me speak, I have an accent, obviously, because everyone sounds different to everyone in every location. And I learned Korean just fine. If you're from down over in Texas, something like there, how everyone speaks like this, right? Or maybe you're from Canada, where people have a little bit more like, I think I'm doing like a Kermit the Frog now or something. Oh, hey, hey everyone. And I don't even know what that is. Everyone has a different regional accent, no matter where you're from. Doesn't matter. I've heard people from all over the world speak Korean, and they all sound like Korean if they've been practicing a long time. They all sound just like a Korean person would. So it doesn't matter where you come from. Yeah, garlic is ma늘. That's why the series DP, what's that? Received backlash? I think I missed something. Not gonna lie, I don't even have a language app. I just use your videos in my college Korean classes, and I'm always ahead of you because of you, bro. Oh, that's nice. It's nice to hear. I get that a lot. I get, not too often, but I have gotten a lot of emails where someone will message me and it's a Korean teacher and they say, I play your videos in my class. I'm like, okay, cool. Okay, yes, it's top of the hour. DP is a series about Korean military. Okay. I don't know the Korean title of it. But yeah, Korean military is, unless things have changed recently, I'm sure they've changed a little bit recently, but unless they've really changed, it's not like romantic. It's not glamorous. It's really like it's like boot camp. I mean, is boot camp cool? If you really like it, sure. But in general, you're not going to have like good memories of, oh, boot camp was so much fun. It's like you wake up early, they give you punishment for being late and everyone hates you and you do extra push-ups and you're running in the rain and you get sick and you get injured. Like, it's not, imagine that for like 2 years plus the cultural dynamics of having to speak really politely, of having someone commanding you and telling you to do things just to make you kind of break your spirits. Like, I don't want to do it. Anyway, that's enough for today. Hopefully you all learned something from the class. Thank you for coming. I'll be here again next week. We'll do another lesson next week. It'll be something completely different. It's not going to be a general, like a discussion about topics. It'll be a regular grammar form we'll do. Thank you everyone for coming, and I'll see you again next time. 그럼 다음에 또 봐.